as we kick it off, how would you describe survival mood?
When I first saw the title of Instagram, it just made me think because so much of my book was about wanting my insides to match my outsides. And I think that they do feel congruent now. And I think when we're in survival mode, our insides and outsides don't match. They don't match because you're trying to conserve so much energy to keep up a facade and keep the mask up to literally survive, and that eventually gets too exhausting. We run
Hmm.
out of steam, and so I think that I like the idea of it being disrupted because it's like I'm over it.
I'm over it too. And that's why we are having this conversation today in hopes that somebody else will get over it and get
Yes,
the help
right.
that they need. Welcome to Survival Mood Disrupted, the podcast for those who are done performing, done people pleasing, and done living life on autopilot. I'm your host, Letitia, the Survival Mood Disruptor, and this is where we create disruptive, unapologetic transformations for those who are ready to exit survival mode and reclaim their power. Every episode is your permission slip to burn the rule book, break the cycle, and finally build a life that feels like yours. So let's disrupt everything that's holding you back and start living life on your own terms. This is your trigger warning. This podcast is raw. It is real and it doesn't sugarcoat what it means to survive trauma, abuse, mental health battles, or even the aftermath of living in survival mode for too damn long. What you hear on Survival Mode Disrupted includes unfiltered stories, graphic details, and a vulnerable truth that may trigger some of the audience. Please prioritize your emotional safety. If something feels too heavy, pause, breathe, come back when you're ready, or not at all. Your healing is yours to honor. These episodes are based on lived experience, not therapy sessions or clinical advice. Listening does not replace mental health treatment or constitute a coach client relationship. If you're in crisis, please seek immediate help from a licensed professional or contact your local emergency services. This space is built with care, but it's also built for truth and built for disruption. Take what you need, leave the rest, and most of all, trust yourself. If this podcast speaks to your soul, you don't have to do this work alone. Feel free to join our free Facebook community for high achieving women ready to break cycles and heal out loud. Join us at Disrupting Survival Mode on Facebook, or grab the book that started this movement, Exiting Survival Mode, raw step by step guide to help you identify, release, and rebuild from the survival patterns that have been keeping you stuck. There is QR codes for both on the screen. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Survival Mode Disrupted. I am your host, Letitia, the Survival Mode Disruptor, and today we have Stacy with us. So, Stacy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you for having me. So I'm Stacy Schaefer. I am a child, adolescent, and young adult therapist in Arvada, Colorado, which is outside of Denver. And I've been in private practice for approaching 20 years. And also, most recently, I wrote a book called With Love from a Children's Therapist, hashtag lessons I've learned along the way.
Okay, I'm so excited to have you here. So, Stacy, why don't you tell me your story 2 and 3 Survival Mode?
Okay. So I was born and raised in Vegas, which is not my fault. It is not my fault. Just so we're clear. But I am an only child. My mom's a single mom until I was 10. And I so there's some mention of like abuse, sexual abuse warnings right here. And so I was molested by an uncle when I was 3. One of the compounding traumas was that I tried to get support and help from my mom, and she couldn't hear it. And learning later, that's generational trauma for you. That, there was undealt with stuff, but couldn't hear it. Happened for 7 more years. Stepdad joins the family, lovely man. And he was like, there's something wrong with this kid. Like 10-year-olds don't usually hide in their closet when they're home from school. They put me somewhere like a treatment facility, and they put paperwork in front of me because it was 1989. And they're like, here's paperwork, you're 10, this is fine. And it was like, did someone touch you? And I was like, yes. Fast forward, court case. I'm 11. Mom's diagnosed with breast cancer. I need to believe that. So this is about the worst part of my story. I need to believe that my mom had good intentions, but she saw some ad in the magazine that was like, did your kid need support? We'll come get them. And so in the middle of the night, I guess my mom paid $100 for men came to get me in the middle of the night to take me to Utah to a residential treatment center. But I was trafficked there. And so the intention of this place, they framed it, and there's been documentaries and all kinds of things. I guess Paris Hilton was in a similar place, but it sounds like hers was different. I can't watch her show, but it was advertised as like, your kid, there's hard things at home, like we'll take care of your kid and they'll get like counseling and food and support, but it was not accurate. And so I come back after a year. Mom is dying of breast cancer. I remember the moment, speaking of insides versus outsides, the very moment when I split. I was at my front door. I had just been released. No, not a person in the world knows what happened to me that didn't do something to me. I was like, that was then, this is now, we're starting now. So I was like, we're in survival mode, if you will, because now we're starting a new life. None of that, it's fine. None of that matters. We're starting now. Believe it or not, that outlives its usefulness. And so I built a life on perfection and shiny and performance. Mom dies when I'm 22, go to grad school to help other people. We don't need support. Let's help other people. And anyway, like, I've done a lot of work over the years, but it was about a decade ago that I started talking about Utah and the hardest part of my story. So there's some things to work with, maybe. I don't know.
I love your energy, Stacy, but wow.
I know, I'm a lot.
Yeah, I think the first thing that jumps off at me was being 11 and having to go through a court case. What was that like for you? What was that
Yeah.
experience like for you, and how did it impact you now that you are looking back on that?
Yeah, so I was still 10 when that happened, if that matters at all. But I was 11 when the Utah people came to get me. It was back in the day when we thought it was a good idea for kids to testify. And so I was in a booster seat, like testifying. And I would say that that is one of the points in my life because I'm known for having a really, really good memory, which, like, it's borderline creepy. And it's effective in my field. But like when teens are like, oh my gosh, I'm like dating this guy. I'm like, wasn't he a jerk to you sophomore year in science? And they're like, ugh. But it is the one of the memories where like some of that like I disassociated from because he was there and I had to look at him and say, like, is that the man that hurt you? I think that, and my mom, in her infinite wisdom, ma'am, we were in the parking lot before I testified. My mom thought that would be a good idea to, for the first time in her life, tell about what happened to her when she was 11.
As you're outside the court.
Yeah. She's like, I know how you feel because this happened. And so I get it. And it, like, it's a one-time incident, tragic story, but like, girl. And then my mom was pissed at me because when I testified, they were trying to go all different angles and they're like, that I'm making stuff up. And they're like, Did anything like this ever happen to your mom? Remember? And I was like, remember swearing on that, and I was like, she was so mad. Oh my gosh, she was so mad. I'm like, yes. And so, yeah, that, I mean, like looking back, like I'm glad we don't do that now because that was terrifying.
I can imagine. Like it's just gut-wrenching to
I
even hear
know.
about it because that's a huge responsibility for a child. And while, we want to encourage our kids to speak up and be honest about the things that they've been through, to put them in that situation at such a young age. Yeah, that's a lot.
We've since realized there's a place here. I'm sure there's lots of them, all different kinds of agencies, but it's called Ralston House, and it's like it's an actual house in a neighborhood, and it's like a one-stop shop if a kid reveals like abuse. It's like whimsical, and you go talk to someone. There's a medical thing. There's a recording studio, but it's very much child-centered to make that whole process like not intimidating. And I remember like taking a tour like there, and that I've sent people there. But and I'm like, what would that have been like? That's real like you get lollipops? I didn't get a lollipop.
Yeah. So moving on to Utah.
Ugh.
Um, Whenever I think of Utah, I think of that infamous church. Was that associated in any way?
Like the cult,
Yeah.
I don't know because they advertise themselves as Mormons, but I know lots of good Mormons. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, I don't think you get the title of that faith. So not overtly, not overtly. But there was a lawsuit several years ago because and not because of some of the, I mean, it was in the documents about some of the things that kids were reporting, but it was mainly a money laundering scheme because there was like it was like a big worldwide association of specialty schools, and there was like 12 or something underneath it. And so they instilled fear in everyone to not say anything. Like I was home alone when I got back because my parents were in the hospital with my mom, and I was checking the mail, and they sent a letter that's like, "Is your kid not doing okay? You can come back for free." And I set it on fire. And so, yes, I did. And so there was a lawsuit because there were so many of them. But like all of these parents were told your kid's gonna lie to get out of here because they want to misbehave. And so I it wasn't until one kid was like in Texas said this really really happened. And they went to a lawyer. So I know that like a lot of them are shut down and some are under new ownership, but that whole system is gone.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about that because I've heard of stories very recently of like houses and homes where children, often in the foster care system, are sent, or
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
are been through a system and they are creating waves in the system, they get sent to these houses. And the reason why I became aware of it is because a child had committed suicide there.
Oh.
And then a lot of information started coming out about what was really going on. And
Yes.
while there are places that have genuine intentions of helping children move on, I think the very first takeaway here is that parents need to really do their research, right? Like
Yeah.
having your children away from you for an extended period of time, giving essentially responsibility away, and put it in the hands of strangers is detrimental, even in good situations, right? Because first of all, the child often feels like, well, I've just been passed on, like, um, but then when you have people who don't have good intentions, they're destroying lives. And I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
disgusting, to say the least. Are you comfortable talking about some of the experiences that you had?
Yeah, and I think that like I look back and my mom had a letter that like she had them read that was like you've never talked about what happened with your uncle and you deserve a place to heal and I'm sick, so they'll take care of you. And so I want to believe that it was good intentions, but I mean, my mom died when I was 22, and so can't have this conversation with her. But I want to be like, who sends their ch- child estate away, like 6 hours away, without checking the place? Like all my friends with kids, like before they go to anywhere, they tour it and interview, and like that's just what you do. And so there's definite errors there, and like yes, we're all raised by humans, but my humans really failed me.
Hmm. And I can relate to that. My humans failed me too, you
Yeah,
know?
and it makes me feel defensive for the parents that come to me. They're like, "I think I messed something up," and I'm like, "Let me tell you a story. Gather round." And that like that, I had these ones that were so concerned about how they were handling a sensitive issue with their kid, and they were handling it beautifully, and they're just like, "We're worried, we're screwing up," and I'm like, "Listen, I would have killed to have you guys as parents." Killed. And I was like, so don't tell me that.
Hmm. I had someone say to me once, if you are worried about being a bad parent, you're a good enough parent because it's on your
Yes.
mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even recognize that their actions, the things that they do, have long-lasting impacts on their children. Like for me, I was told at 7 that my birth was the reason why my parents divorced.
Oh, that doesn't leave any kind of scar in a child. So that's good.
Not at all. And 20 years later, I addressed it with my father. And he was so dismissive. And I'm like, I don't think that you understand that that's one conversation set me on a path of complete destruction.
Totally.
Because as a 7-year-old, the only thing that I heard was you being born ruined the most important relationship in your life at that point in time. And that's a heavy burden to carry. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and kids are egocentric anyway. And so, like, they're already like, they feel responsible. And so, to be like, to confirm that, to have that confirmation, you're like, cool, I'm terrible then.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Terrible.
that
And
filter impacts everything.
everything, the way that I showed up for 20 years, that's how it impacted me. And there was no ownership. And that was disappointing once I had spent the time to heal. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I'm curious, what did your relationship? I know your mom was battling her life, but what was your relationship like once you got home?
So my mom went to her grave not knowing any of what happened to me. I'm never even asked, by the way, like, was the food good? Was it not? There were no questions. It was just the weirdest thing. And so my mom, uh, I suppose in her moderate defense, my mom suffered with breast cancer. She suffered. She had 17 surgeries. They did a mastectomy on the wrong breast. Yeah, when I had ankle surgery in college because I shattered my ankle ice skating, first time I wasn't very good. Their new thing was like they gave me a Sharpie and I had to write yes in my own writing on the correct ankle because I guess we need to do that. And so my mom was pretty preoccupied, um like she was up and down with remission and not, and like her religion was Oprah, so she just like anything Oprah said, and so didn't really notice me, but I liked that because speech and debate was my jam. My coach, my who was my favorite teacher on the planet and was like a surrogate mom and left me the most amazing review on Amazon. I cried and cried. But she was kind of supplemental, and I was good at lots of things academically and socially, and so I was out of the house a lot on purpose. And so I think that she liked having a low maintenance child, which obviously impacted how I showed up in the world, right? And get in trouble all the time for not asking for help. But anyway, and so I don't know if I would have been able to own it at the time, but I resented her. And during my healing and so many years in therapy, I just kept saying there was one kid to keep track of. One. Not saying that like anyone with multiple kids has like any kind of excuse, but one.
Mm-hmm.
And so that always just baffled me because I grew up with a lot of LDS people who have like 8 kids in their family. I'm like, they wouldn't let like this happen to one of their kids.
Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't present in any sense of the word.
Okay. And in a sense, you can kind of understand based on what you said, because she was in her own survival mode. And I think one of the beauties often in healing is being able to have some consideration for
Yeah,
others in that, like, I've always been in that space. Well, now that I've healed, like, well, what would have made them want to do that, or what, and
sure.
based on what you said, she was literally just surviving herself, right? And it doesn't excuse anything, but at least it gives some context to
Yeah. I
the situation.
I made a video, like I did a like talk over video on my socials that it was like a minute and a half, that it was like an open letter to my mom. And it was like, because it's been a buzz a lot lately in the news about people going no contact with their parents. And so it's kind of speaking to that. And I was just like, I don't know if you were still alive, if we would be no contact. I don't know. You died when I was 22. And so I'm like, I don't, we didn't talk about the hard stuff when you were alive. And so there's no way to know. And so I'm like, the only thing that like I can say is that I love you and you hurt me, and both are true.
and and two hard things can be true at the same time,
Yes,
right?
there's nuance.
Yeah. So what did your healing look like, Stacy?
Well, I think it was really both helpful and irritating when I learned you don't arrive. Super annoying. So annoying. Like I'm like, is there like a ribbon? Is there like a snack station? Like there's nothing at the end. Because
I
there's no
need a certification to say
right?
I
Like
healed.
what? Like I'll do it. Is it an
Yeah.
online program? And so I think that my healing like continues to be like feeling congruent because like a
Mhm.
decade ago could absolutely not talk about this stuff. And I think that, and it feels a little full circle because there was conversation that I had, and like they'd asked me a question about my childhood, and I couldn't answer, and I left. I changed the subject, and I left like crying. And
Mhm.
that same person I had brunch with yesterday, and we're like having like open conversation. So that looks like healing to me. Is that my I don't feel like I'm about to be exposed at any moment. That I'm just like, yeah, I'm past the survival. I'm thriving. I'm like,
And that's the ultimate goal. Like,
yeah,
right? Like, I think we as a society celebrate surviving, right? Like, I can think of several songs that we've all jammed to that celebrate surviving, and a lot of us
yeah,
think, well, that's it. No, the final destination is thriving. Surviving is still just going through the motions oftentimes, right? And just trying to keep our head above water just to get through. And I know even for me, like, I was very naive in thinking, like, once I left my abusive husband, just like that, life would just snap back. But then I found myself at the bottom of a bottle every night because my thoughts, my emotions were just too much for me. And it's interesting that oftentimes when we go through these like horrific things, The emotions that we hold on to are shame and guilt, as if it's all on us, or the anger really hides the sadness that we're experiencing. And it's easier to hold on to the anger. It's easier to ignore and avoid. But our freedom really comes when we can face, challenge, and change, right? Whenever I talk about accident survival mode, I say it happens in three phases. And I say, first one is self-awareness, because we can't change what we can't see, right? And I often liken self-awareness to this like lighthouse. It's this magical place in time where we have the opportunity to see what's in front of us, what's around us, what's behind us. But it also gives us an opportunity to course correct, to change directions, to do something different. The second phase is reprogramming, right? Being able to challenge our narratives, challenge our beliefs, challenge our story, and how we are writing it, right? One of the biggest shifts for me was recognizing that although I had been victimized, it didn't mean that I had to really victim badge. And then the last piece is a reinvention. I hear a lot of people in this space say, "Oh, well, we're going to heal you so you can get back to who you were." And I don't believe that that is even possible, right? Like, we're talking about childhood trauma. Do I want to go back to who I was when I was 5? No. And I think a lot of what we have to do is really just be willing to put down the survival identities that we pick up, right? I was a big people pleaser. I was a fixer. And I thought that I was doing the world a service by leaning into these elements of my quote unquote personality. And I was almost shocked to learn that they were trauma responses because of what I had experienced, right? So, like healing, like you said, it's not a destination. We don't get a badge. It's a daily decision
Yes.
to move ourselves forward, and it takes work. Takes a lot of
Yeah,
work.
for
And it's
sure.
frustrating as hell sometimes,
Mhm.
especially when we get triggered, right? Like, it's
Right.
been 20 years and somebody walks
Mhm.
up behind me very fast because I used to get approached a lot from behind for my first husband. Somebody
Ugh.
comes up on me very fast, I immediately go into freeze. And it's not
Yeah.
that I haven't done the work. You know what I
No.
mean?
No,
I've
your
done
nervous
it.
system is doing what it was designed to do. You're just like, we got to fight a tiger. We ready.
Yeah. And that's why I believe these conversations that we have are just so important, right? Like, we're not trying to sugarcoat anything. We're not trying to pussyfoot around the truth. Like, to get over our trauma takes a lot of damn work, but it's possible.
It's possible. And that, like, I have a hard time when I see like a documentary or a news thing or someone like, well, they that committed some terrible crime that said they had a traumatic past. I'm like, yeah, get in line. Like, lots of people, but you have choices, and that's a lot of what I wanted to do with my book and with my clients, to show them that there's a way out. Like, my very most favorite quote, and I have two different rooms, but it's like, even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. Victor Hugo from Les Mis. It is possible. Yeah, I get dark, trust me, I get dark, but you don't have to intentionally harm other people in the process.
And that's so true. So tell us a bit more about your book and how we can find you
Okay.
online and all that jazz.
Yeah. So I'm guessing by the time this comes out, because like 10 minutes ago, my manager just told me that my first chapter would be available on my website. So I'm guessing by the time that this publishes, that will actually be true for sure. But my book, it combines my personal lived experience and my professional knowledge about what kids need in one handy dandy little book with the little butterfly, because butterflies are my jam. It's really symbolic, about, like, from survive to thrive. And so, yeah, I did my own audiobook. And so I flew to Nashville to do that. So if you like this cartoony voice, it's yours. And so that's available too. So I can tell you anything you want to know about it.
Okay, well, what's your website?
And so it is author stacyschaefer.com. I'm guessing it'll be in the show notes because
Mm-hmm.
there's a million ways to spell
Just about
Stacy and a million
Stacy.
ways to spell Schaefer. So there's lots to like for my mom to need to apologize for, but we'll let that one go. But author stacyschaefer.com, and you can read a little bit about my book. There's a link. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Audible, Spotify. And then there's a contact me form to reach out if you wanted to.
Okay. So before we wrap it all up, Stacy, one key takeaway for the audience to action.
Yeah, I would say that even if you think something like is buried, it's still impacting you. It's still impacting the people around you. Like I tell kids, you can choose to not talk about the shameful thing or the embarrassing thing or whatever it is, but it's kind of like bringing food in your room and then you throw clothes over it. Like you don't see it. Eventually it'll smell. Nobody wants to smell. And even when you take it out, there's lingering scent. So I would say that like our all of our work is to reduce the amount of stuff that we are choosing to hide. Does it mean everyone has access to us? Absolutely not. That's not healthy. To try and connect with the safe person in your life, something that you have perhaps like hidden or find shameful, to let that air because then it becomes less scary and it stops smelling.
I love it. Because I mean, listen, it's unavoidable. It's either deal with the stink or deal with the issue. Stacey, thank you so much for your time on Survival Mode Disrupted. And audience, I just want to remind you, you were not built to break, but you damn sure were not built to just survive. Disrupt the cycle, reclaim your life, and thrive on your own terms. And I'll see you next week. Once again, thank you for joining another episode of Survival Mode Disrupted, hosted by the Survival Mode Disruptor, Letitia. You didn't land here by accident. This conversation, it probably cracked something open on purpose. Because survival mode isn't just a phase, it's a pattern, an identity, a prison masked as strength. But here's the truth. You're not broken, you're just unfinished. So if something stirred in you today, don't ignore it, don't numb it, move with it. And I want to once again invite you to join Disrupting Survival Mode, the Facebook community where healing is loud and messy and real. I also want to invite you to buy my book, The Survival Mode Action Plan, because your breakthrough deserves a blueprint. And if you felt seen today, be sure to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and drop a review. That's how amplify the voices that need to be heard. And remember, this isn't about fixing yourself. This is about finding yourself again beneath the rubble. Until next time, choose ease, choose power, choose you. This is Survival Mode Disrupted. Let's keep shaking shit up.